Rolling through Gallup, New Mexico on June 19th, 2023. 40 East. 40 East is a treacherous road, especially near Arizona, where I've basically only had two flat tires in my life, and they were both within the last 2 years on 40 East, right outside of Seligman, Arizona. But that's a story for another day. Last night, I read an article, just a brief article. It was talking about Larry Jordan, Michael Jordan's older brother. So he was 11 months older than Michael Jordan, and he dominated him in the pickup games they played against each other all up until high school, up until I think Jordan's junior year. So Jordan didn't even really make the varsity team until his junior year. So Michael had a little bit of an edge to him because he felt that his father paid a lot more attention to Larry Jordan, his talented older brother. Now, Larry Jordan had a vertical of 44 inches. Now, I don't know what Michael Jordan's vertical is, but I know the first digit is lower than a 4. So it's probably about 35 inches. But anyway, so Larry Jordan was the star of the family. And Michael, younger brother, only 11 months, but younger brother, he resented that. And what happened was, between Michael Jordan's sophomore and junior year, he grew from like 5'9" to 6'4", and Larry Jordan stayed at 5'8". And they had a 2 or 3 minute clip from 40 years ago, basically almost like 38 years ago, when Michael Jordan was a rookie of the year. And they showed Larry Jordan dunking some balls, just, going to the hoop. I mean, this guy, he made Spud Webb look like a joke. This guy was unbelievable. Just a couple plays, but he was just going to the hoop, and he just flies up there and does stuff that would work for the All-Star contest this year, the dunk contest these days. So it just goes to show you, in life, there's some important variables that you can't control, and they will carry a ton of freight, and for some people they will carry all the freight going forward. So I mean, I think it's pretty unfortunate. I mean, this guy, they say he's 5'8", but he might be 5'5" or 5'6", because Michael Jordan's 6'6", and he was a foot taller than him standing there. So is that a sad thing? How sad is it? Larry Jordan, who I never even heard of, that narrative got pushed to the side. But even Michael said he was the best. He was the only player that was better than him, and he kind of still says it to this day. Obviously, he wasn't better than him as a pro, but in his mind, he wasn't the better player all his life. Larry Jordan was. So then it appears that Larry Jordan kind of went along for the ride with Michael, and I know Michael just sold his ownership percentage in the Charlotte Bobcats recently, within the last few weeks, I believe. And I think that's where the article came from. So I think Larry was working with the company, the Bobcats, the NBA team. And so people would say, well, he's just riding the coattails of his brother. But you don't understand, like, those people, they cry about nepotism and stuff like that. They don't quite get it, because, like, let's just say a guy has a State Farm insurance company in a community for 30 or 40 years. If he has 2 or 3 sons, odds are like about 90% or greater that one of them is going to be working there at least, and probably taking over. So they take over, and then if a guy has a machine shop, or a guy owns a restaurant, his kids get a head start. It's basically, if you're born into a family and the father is anything, or so the mother too, I mean, you have an apprenticeship for what it's like. Like, say your dad's a doctor. From the moment you were born and the moment you realize you're alive, a little bit later on, you're getting an apprenticeship for how a doctor behaves at the dinner table, how a doctor behaves with friends. It's pretty fascinating, and no one really talks about it. So that's what you're likely going to become. If your dad's a bookie, you're more likely to be a bookie. If your dad's a doctor, you're more likely to be a doctor. If your dad owns an insurance company, you're more likely to work in the insurance business for your dad. If your dad owns a restaurant, it goes on and on and on. And so and they want to complain. People complain about, oh, Hollywood Nepo babies. It's a new term in the last half a year or so, maybe year, because some famous people who are kind of only famous because of their parents, but so what? It's the same thing, and there's thousands upon 10,000s of people that were born to famous parents that you've never even heard of that try to make it in Hollywood. There's no really freebies there, and when people make it, they say, well, if they have a connection in a family, well, he would have never made it. Well, whatever. Like Michael Jordan, if he wouldn't have grown to 6'6", would have never made it in the NBA. If Larry would have been 6'6" and Michael Jordan stayed at 5'8", 5'7", then Larry would have been in the NBA more likely than Michael. Michael had no chance at that point. So, another interesting thing is that I know just years ago when Michael Jordan made the NBA, was it when he was inducted? I said when he made, as if there was any doubt. When he was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame, I remember that I used to watch those. The NFL ones are pretty good. You'll tear up. The NBA ones are pretty good, but the NBA they're a little bit more funny and jovial sometimes, but they're serious as well. But his Hall of Fame induction ceremony, his speech was so ungrateful. It appeared at the time, excuse me, and he had some anecdotes of a lot of just petty competition type things, like pickup games or whatever with NBA teammates. It just seemed really out of place, but it all makes sense, right? So all his life, he battled his brother, and competition was his dream. Now he has the gambling issue all his life. God only knows how much money he's blown gambling. They say Daly blew like $50 million in 1 year, John Daly, the golfer. But who knows how much Michael's blown, because he's the richest athlete of all time and has made the most money, even more than Tiger Woods, I believe. And so he has blown an astronomical sum. And so, yeah, it's a tremendous gambling problem, but it's not as much of a gambling problem when you have tremendous cash flow. But if the cash flow never worked out, let's just say that he had an injury when Michael Jordan was in his first or second year, you're still going to have that gambling problem if you have no career after that. So it would be pretty vicious. So he knows it, obviously. He has an action, Jones. He needs to put it all on the line, and people do it in various ways. I watched the final round of the U.S. Open yesterday, and there's an intensity at that higher level, that upper gear that people need to have to really be the elite in any sport. And, your whole legacy's on the line in those moments. With Jordan, he was 6 for 6 in the NBA Finals, so 6-0, but, for sure he didn't have to win a couple of those. Utah was down 3-2 on their home court, and they had that game won before Jordan's famous final shot, which wasn't his final shot because he came back a couple years later and played for the Washington Wizards. But it doesn't really matter that he played for the Wizards. Like, believe it or not, Joe Montana played for the Kansas City Chiefs, and hardly anyone remembers it. There's a lot of things like that. But Jordan didn't sully his reputation at all, coming back years later with the Wizards. But so he could have easily lost that. If Utah wins that game, they have their game 7 at home as well. They had been over 50% to win that. And then there was a series where they played Charles Barkley, I believe, and the Phoenix Suns. And I think Phoenix you could argue, might have been a better team. And but of course, the great ones, it's amazing. Like, take for instance, like the great players in the magical moments, in the high stakes moments, the high leverage situations. It's just amazing what they do. Like, so Saturday in the third round of the U.S. Open, final round was Sunday. So Scottie Scheffler, who's arguably the best player in the world, if he's not number one, it's him and Rahm, and you can argue Rory. Those are the three. But so the leaders are minus 11 at that point, maybe 10, and they're a couple holes behind him. This is the third round. He's on 17, Scottie Scheffler. He just missed like a 6-footer for bird on 15. Got a bogey on 16, so he's minus 4. He's 6 back, about ready to be 7 back, because I think the final group had a birdie late, and before they bogeyed. So he's going to be basically out of it. So, he holes out for eagle from like 192 yards on 17. It's like the toughest hole on the course, right? So 18 is also one of the toughest holes on the course. Blasts his drive right down the middle. 30 feet, 25, 30 feet for bird on the green and 2. buries it. So he goes birdie, eagle, and then he's only 3 outs because Ricky Fowler bogeys 18 on Saturday. He's only 3 outs starting the last round. Like, it's like impossible. It's like it's got to be like a couple thousand to 1. I mean, maybe it's got to be more than that. But like the great players, they do that magical stuff, and the loser type journeyman players don't do it. Like Harris English was right there at the time. Of course, he didn't eagle birdie to put himself in contention. I think he went par bogey, totally whiffed on a shot on 18. I mean, totally whiffed. But a couple players this week totally whiffed. But you know, Tiger Woods on 16, excuse me, on 16, I think it was the 2005 Masters against Chris DeMarco. Chris DeMarco has like 15 feet for bird. Tiger Woods is off the green, and Lanny Watkins, the announcer, I think his comment was wrong, but he says he might not even get this ball within DeMarco's ball. But it's that green, the 16 is the par 3 where it has that big slope where if you get it up on the hill there, it just trickles down to the cup. And I don't like those easy pin placements on the last round of majors. Long story short, everyone knows what happened. Tiger chipped it. It's just right out of a movie. You could sit there for 1,000 years and never have it happen again the way it did. The ball hangs up right on the lip. The Nike swoosh mark hangs there for like the $1 billion advertising moment, and there it drops. I mean, why that doesn't happen with those other players? You know what I mean? It's like the great players, they have that. And John Rahm, he won the U.S. Open in 2021. Louis Oosthuizen is the most likely winner at that point. You know, he has a couple holes to go and a couple easy ones to go, and so 4 or 5 holes earlier, or maybe I think the day before, John Rahm hit a ball that he thought was out of bounds, and he got lucky and he ended up scrambling for a par on the hole. It's just a key thing where he could have got a double bogey and basically been out of it. But so like on 17, John Rahm makes like a 25-foot sidewinder for birdie. 18, another 25-footer sidewinder for birdie. I mean, like the ball has eyes. Like it was looking for a hole to fall into. You know, it's unbelievable. So, you know, you just have to appreciate the magical elite players in all these sports because they're not normal guys. You know, another guy I think that has some crazy magic on the PGA Tour is Victor Hovland. He does crazy shit. He even hold out on at the U.S. Open for eagle. I mean, so, like he'll get like a 7 on a par 5, a double bogey. He's such a relentless player. He'll come back like birdie, eagle. And, you know, he has a couple flaws in his game, though. He does hit some wayward shots, and he can get some big numbers, but he's a relentless player. Like Scheffler's a relentless player, but everyone knows it. But Victor Hovland is an amazing player, and he's going to likely win a major. Of course, no one has to ever win another major. But so the sports world will teach you a lot about life and how there's certain people that great things happen to. And there's other people that the chance of something great happening to them are like essentially zero, like the journeyman golfer. I mean, you'll have a fluke every once in a while in a big tournament, even a major. You will have a total journeyman fluke, but you'll see these tournaments and you'll say, well, you know, that guy, that journeyman player, he only finished 2 out of the lead in this big event, this major, or the British Open or the U.S. Open. Well, he could have won it. Yeah, but he kind of couldn't have won it. You know what I mean? Like when push comes to shove, you know, the elite players kick it into gear, and you'll see this a lot. Like let's just say you have an NBA basketball series and you have a dominant team, and you know, say it's a 7-game series, and it doesn't have to be the finals. Say it's the second round, and you'll have like the inferior team will be down 3-2, and they'll have a home game. So if they win that home game, it'll go to a game 7. But the game 7 will be at the superior team's home court. But the game 6 usually happens like this. So the better team, it could even be a pick'em game, like nobody's favored, but someone might be favored by 2 or 3 points max. But even a lot of times, even the inferior team is favored there. But so it'll be real close, and like the inferior team will even be up 4 or 5 points sometimes in the fourth quarter or even late. But you know, with minutes to go, like all these key plays happen, and then the better team wins that closeout game on the road a lot more times than they lose it. And it's just like the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game. You would think like, oh, any team could win. They've played even up until this point. But it's just amazing how many times that the superior team, they just get to every key rebound, the key plays, the key three-pointers, everything. So that's the way the world works. And you got to recognize superiority when you see it. And that's with business too, the stock market. There's just great companies that are going to keep marching on, like the Google. It's a great company. It'll be forever in our lifetimes. And you could say that about Apple. I say it about Exxon as well. People are like anti-oil, and they're saying everything's going electric, but oil's forever. And that's all she wrote today.